This very important and prestigious Dr. A.B. Joshi Memorial Lecture has been instituted in the field of agriculture research and education to commemorate the memory of late Padam Shri Professor A.B. Joshi, sir. I take the privilege in welcoming the dignitaries who will be joining us online. The chairperson of the session, Dr. R.B. Singh, sir, former Director NAS, formerly Director IRA, Assistant Director General FAO, Chancellor of CAU Impal, who has been proactively involved and engaged at all stakes of agriculture. We also have Dr. R.S. Paroda, sir, who has joined us online to deliver the prestigious Dr. A.B. Joshi Memorial Lecture.
No. You should announce something.
Can the technical team assist with the online?
Are we audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You can hear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. A very good evening to each one of you, ladies and gentlemen. Professor R.S. Paroda, Professor Trilochan Mahapatra, Professor Punjab Singh, Dr. Mangla Rai, Kirti Singh Ji, Shukla Sahab, Vice Chancellor, Kisan Bhaiyon, Young Bahanon, distinguished participants, dear students, ladies and gentlemen, I have the privilege of introducing today an outstanding colleague and a person who is something best among the best, and that will be the job that I have to perform, and in that I am privileged. But before I do that, let me congratulate all the awardees and the organizers who have done a wonderful job on this inaugural session. So far, the work and the proceedings have been outstanding. Let me say that this lecture series is particularly very important, specifically for me, in the sense that I had the privilege of meeting Dr. Paroda for the first time in Dr. A.B. Joshi's house. This is when we first met each other. And Dr. A.B. Joshi was then the dean and at the IRI, and we had the opportunity after a lecture I gave a seminar, and Dr. Paroda also came to the same place. So I felt very happy today that this is an occasion that we had the opportunity of coincidence of meeting Dr. A.B. Joshi, and we continued our friendship and the continuity and appreciation for the kind of things we learned from Professor Joshi, just like a family member. And Dr. Paroda is more like a brother to me, and we have been working together on the many things that could possibly bear the fruits which Dr. Mahapatra has been wishing. My apologies to my BHU colleagues, particularly because I had Mahamanas Sarva Vidya Ki Rajdhani as my place of work for several years. As some of you probably kindly recall, I was senior professor and dean of the Faculty of Agriculture at BHU in the 70s. But let me say that today's privilege is that I shall be introducing a person who is best among the best. And if I can say that कि सूरज को दिया दिखाना है, इनको इंट्रोड्यूस करने में कुछ बात कहना कभी भी काफी नहीं होगी जो कि इनको डिस्क्राइब कर सके. मैं इतना ही कहूँगा कि besides but it is very important for me to tell, particularly for encouraging the youngsters. Besides winning the Padma Bhushan, the coveted award about 25 years ago, Dr. Paroda has been decorated with several coveted national and international awards, including the Rafi Ahmad Kidwai Memorial Award, the FICCI Award, Om Prakash Bhasin Award, BP Pal Memorial Award, Swaminathan Award, Borlaug Award, you name it. Hardly there is any award worth name that has not been bestowed upon Professor Paroda, as a matter of fact. And today's modern ICR that we see amongst us, and we feel very proud of it, under the leadership of the present and the past president of NAS and so on, we can always say that the modern ICR is the largest gift that Dr. Paroda has given to this nation. Dr. Paroda, because of this, we feel so assured that whether it is COVID pandemic or it is any other thing, we have the resilience that you have provided with the process that you built as the leader of the ICR system. He, as many of you probably know, he was the general president of the Indian Science Congress. He has been the president of CAUS, fellow of several national and international academies, particularly the Third World Academy of Sciences. He received the so many Doctor of Science degrees, honoris causa, including from Ohio State University. As a matter of fact, on the call of the nation, he was able to commit himself to several of the new things which have been path-breaking and provided the new policies which are able to transform India and the Indian agriculture for making it new India. His leadership in germplasm, as you all know, the AgriScience gene bank is named after him. Also in Kazakhstan, the gene bank of Kazakhstan is named after him. His leadership in some of these areas which built the basic way of growth and developing green agriculture for greening economy and greening the new India, these have been his major contribution. My dear friends, if I go on narrating many of his other contributions, I think it will be another lecture. So please forgive me, but let me say that how happy we are, Dr. Paroda, that you are able to spare your time. And may I have the privilege and honor to request you kindly make your presentation, sir. Of course, we are all in a hurry, but I am sure we'll be still willing to really absorb as much you will give us. Thank you so much. Please.
Thank you, Professor R.B. Singh, my elder brother. I am grateful for your generous introduction. And I also would like to thank Dr. Mahapatra and all the executive committee members of NAS for having given me this honor to deliver Dr. A.B. Joshi Memorial Lecture. I have the privilege also to be, as Professor Singh mentioned, to be associated with Dr. A.B. Joshi for many decades now, since I joined Pusa Institute in 1964. I was his student doing my PhD, and that's where, as Professor Singh mentioned, I came in touch with him as well. Dr. A.B. Joshi is known for his great stature in Indian agriculture. It is indeed very befitting that NAS has instituted this award in his name. I, being his student, and he being my mentor, guide, philosopher, and well-wisher all through, consider it a great privilege to speak today on a particular subject which was very dear to him. I'll come to it just now, but Dr. A.B. Joshi is a person who had been very instrumental in making our national agriculture system quite strong as we have it today, including his role for reformation of the Indian Council of Agriculture Research. Dr. Joshi was the first Indian Dean of PG School, an excellent teacher. He used to teach the basic plant breeding subject. That's where we learned the fundamentals of plant breeding. An excellent innovator who initiated All India Coordinated Research Program, which is unique today in the whole world. He was the first coordinator of wheat project, first Deputy Director General Crop Science in the reorganized ICR with Dr. B.P. Paul as Director General, and served twice as director of IRI. He served on the board of International Plant Genetic Resources, where he had been in close contact with Professor R.B. Singh, and where he had great admiration for his contributions for genetic resource activities in Asia Pacific region. I have selected this subject very purposely, though I know that the time is short and you all are getting late. But having got this award and being a memorial lecture, I have to justify. And this subject is towards secure and sustainable agriculture. Secure through production and profitability for the farmers. 85% of our farmers are smallholders, and sustainable through permanency of our natural resources. Much has been talked about all these by Dr. Mahapatra in his presidential address. We also are aware that India agriculture today is having come a long way with the GVA of about 180 lakh crores. And agriculture used to contribute almost to 67 to 70% in 50s, but still it is contributing around ranging between 17 to 20%, which is quite comparable despite all the efforts that we have made to grow industry in our country, which is around 25%. And as I said, still agriculture is the main sector on which 50% of our population is dependent. Again, looking at the context, we see that from begging bowl status, we have been able to provide food self-sufficiency for almost 1.39 billion people. This is not only a remarkable achievement, but has given us a pride, national pride, that we can do to address these challenges despite all constraints. And in that context, we have also become an important agricultural exporter today. Our buffer stocks have been rising, and for the last 1 decade, almost ranging between 75 to almost more than 80 million tons. Looking at the GVA in agriculture, we see that compared to many other sectors, our agricultural GVA has been retained reasonably at a level of about 2.9%. We though want it to be 4% to see that our national agricultural GDP grows at 8%. So basically, agricultural growth is proportionally dependent to that of the national agricultural growth, national growth. Looking at the scenario of COVID-19, we had in fact forgotten the famines. Famines which we had in 1943, almost the year when I was born. About 3 million people died, not because of any disease, but because of hunger and because of wrong policy of Britishers at that time. We had forgotten these famines, but again, COVID-19 has brought attention that we need to be careful and see that these pandemics can reoccur at any time. And in that context, now we see before us the global attention towards food, nutrition, and environmental security, and food not for only feeding the people, but for good health and immunity. And we are aware that over the last 2 years, almost more than 157 million people have become below poverty line, which means those who are around 800 million, the number has increased, and almost 42 countries globally are now having the food crisis level. According to the World Food Program, if they are not supported and provided food, possibly it will be very difficult for them to survive. But fortunately, India has a buffer stock which can sustain us even for more than 2 to 3 years. And that's what is a matter of great satisfaction. So we can be legitimately very happy that we had green, white, and blue revolutions. But then, despite these revolutions, why there is need to have a secure and sustainable agriculture? This is what is the topic of my discussion today. We know there are challenges. The first challenge is in internal. Agriculture is a state subject. So even if you decide anything at federal level, it all depends whether other states would like to agree and implement them. Whereas there are issues, much has been talked earlier. I think also Honorable Minister mentioned, Dr. Mahapatra mentioned that the issues relating to soil, environment, water, energy cannot be confined to a particular state, and they need a national level of decision making. Then also there are global challenges of so in that context, when we look further, we find that it seems there is some problem of connectivity. With regard to my sharing of
Right.
Yeah, okay. So we have the challenges both at the national level as well as at the individual level, and there are obvious challenges which have been talked about of second generation problems of green revolution. Time is short. I won't go into these details, and you will be discussing all these in this Congress. But the major challenge now is with regard to economic access to food. Having got physical access, what we now today require is the economic access to the food. And am I audible, please?
Yes, you
Hello?
are audible.
Okay. Sorry, because I find some problem here. And now we don't only require food, but now we require nutrition. So future revolutions will have to be around not food, but household nutrition security. And the issue of complacency is emerging much before us. And it seems that we have been performing very well under the crisis, but possibly there is complacency that in agriculture we have produced so much in our buffer stock. We are now one of the important exporting countries. So where is the concern, and why there is need for any further support for science and technology? And in that respect, we also are aware that the challenges of climate change, agriculture as a whole, including land use, agricultural practices, and post-harvest losses contribute to about 30%. 11 from land use, 13 from agricultural, and livestock is a major challenge there, where we have to have better management, fertilizer use to be also efficiently, I'll talk about it, and the cultivation of rice or diversifying rice. And same way, as was mentioned by Dr. Mahapatra, we have to take care of our land degradation problems. And we must reduce the post-harvest losses to the extent possible. Paris Agreement has, in fact, been a major challenge for most of the countries. India seemed to have done exceedingly well. The national determined contribution by India as against target of 2020 seem to have been doing very well. And I must compliment Modi ji for not only fixing higher targets like for reduction in emission intensity, 35% as against 20%, and clean energy by non-fossil fuel sources to that of 40%. And we seem to be on track relating to these two. But the third target, which is more related to agriculture directly, is additional carbon sink, which has to be built either through more forest cover. We don't have more land. We can't go more horizontal because our arable land is almost now fixed to around 140 million hectare for more than 4 decades. And to increase it from 25 to 33% as for agriculture forest policy is the national forest policy is likely to be a difficult task. So we have great option to have better carbon sequestration through conservation agriculture practices for sustainable intensification and through agroforestry. And for that, there are innovations, and I will talk about those subsequently. Recently, only I think last week, Honorable Prime Minister made the Panch Sutras with regard to our commitment for Paris Agreement. And in COP26, it has been mentioned also by Honorable Agriculture Minister, so I would not repeat, but these are laudable. And I think they are attainable as well, because for non-fossil energy capacity to increase to 500 gigawatt is mostly on track. India will complete its 50% energy requirement from renewable energy. On solar energy, we are number 4 in the world. I'm sure the way we are progressing, we will be either second or third in near future. And to achieve net zero target by 2070 is again very ambitious though, but achievable. But it would require investment by developed nations and including also by India to fulfill the promise US $1 trillion as climate finance, which is very critical. So having now looked at these challenges, what are the possible way forward for us? The first I see is that we have to have a paradigm shift from unipillar to now a 3-pillar strategy. No doubt, germplasm improvement helped us in achieving green revolution, but now we require sustainability of these revolutions. So natural resource management have to be properly addressed. But most important is the policy and socio-economic aspect. And this had been a weaker link which we have to strengthen, and we have to make sure that whatever we are producing is beneficial to our smallholder farmers, and the policies are in place for scaling innovation for better socio-economic development. Sustainable development goals are talking about no poverty, zero hunger, climate action, and effective partnership. The partnership of the kind we had for the Green Revolution time between the international centers and the National Agriculture Research System will have to be further strengthened, even with very many advanced institutions, universities, and different players, whether the non-government organizations and also private sector. In this respect, there are definitely more laudable actions taken by the government. The two acts which are there, Manrega, providing minimum 100 days wage employment. We are spending about 75,000 crores annually. And National Food Security Act, about which also mention was made, to cover not only those 17 to 20% people below poverty line, but almost 2/3 of our people, 800 million, to be provided with the food and food at a reasonable cost. of 3 rupees rice, 2 rupees wheat, and 1 rupee maize and coarse cereals. And the budget there is almost 2 trillion rupees. So there are initiatives. How effective they are, how good they are in terms of implementation are the issues to be looked at. No doubt, there are two important requirements: increase capital investment in agriculture. We had much better capital investment when we had Green Revolution. It was almost around 18%, but it has come down to now about 8% only. And we expect that private sector will come forward and make this difference, but this has not happened. And we need to improve social development index. Without improving social development index, especially in those areas which are left behind by Green Revolution region, we will not be able to achieve sustainable development goals. And in a recent national dialogue that we had on SDGs, it came out very clearly that if SDI index is not improved in those states which have been lagged behind, possibly we will not be able to achieve these sustainable development goals successfully. And especially we would require in that context efforts which are mainly in Eastern India and Northeastern region. Now, the issue is from agriculture first to farmer first. हम कहते आए हैं कि भारत एक कृषि प्रधान देश है, पर हमने कृषक को प्रधान तो नहीं बनाया। और आज जो प्रॉब्लम हमारे सामने है वो कृषक को प्रधान बनाने की है। And this is one of the major theme of my presentation. Farmer security demand good soil, good quality water. Water is also now scarce than before. Timely supply of inputs and technologies, good knowledge sharing. Farmers need better knowledge, probably more knowledge than even the subsidies, access to credit at low interest rate, and linkage to national and global markets so that their exploitation by the middleman is avoided to a greater extent. And above all, respect and dignity in the society to our agriculture sector. This is the main reason why youth is not interested to be retained in agriculture. So farmer first approach requires increased support for production. Not only now we have to talk about production, now the time has come for processing, value addition, and marketing. And we need to harness science. There is definitely much in our envelope which need to be scaled in terms of innovation. And those countries who have spent more on innovation have progressed faster. This has been demonstrated globally. And what we need is the scaling the innovations that are available and having right policies to have them scaled, or else we will be left behind. And we need institutional reforms and also the enabling policies. So farmer needs increased production, income by reducing cost on inputs. And there are technologies by which the cost on inputs can be declined. Improving soil health, we are facing great problem. I think our soils are more sick than thirsty. As Dr. Randhawa used to talk, and Ratan Lal says that our Green Revolution belt, the soils are in fact at a level which cannot be sustained any longer. Water harvesting and water use efficiency, much has been again mentioned about it. We need to see how our 70 million hectare capacity that we have so far built can be further enhanced to that of about 90 million hectare or 100 million hectare out of 140 million hectare. Farm mechanization for resilience, and obviously energy and less of energy or green energy agriculture diversification. This is a message which we got from GCARD also, where global conference was organized in Montpellier and also in Uruguay, that we need to now think of not only working crop and commodity-centric research, but we have to shift towards the farming systems approach. And we have to address the concerns of smallholder farmers. And we have to invest more, not only invest more, even double to triple the investment. And post-harvest processing value addition has to be given greater attention, which I have already mentioned. There are obviously good initiatives by the government. As you would see, when I said farmer first, at least Ministry of Agriculture is now also being renamed as Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. Doubling farmers' income is being talked about. Whether we will achieve it by 2024 or 2022 is an issue which need to be further discussed, but direct benefit transfer is there. Soil health cards, even more soil health cards than farming families have been issued, but they have been issued. Whether we are making use of them and effective use of them and using what is needed to be used in our soils is an issue. Mera Gaon, Mera Gaurav is also an initiative. DD Kisan, we never had 24-hour channel for knowledge sharing is now there. And recently government has come up with 3 farm laws. And these laws are to ensure that farmers get linked to the market more effectively. But it seems that there are certain concerns and certain doubts which need to be addressed. Concern for coordination, now cross-cutting issue. Concern for coordination, convergence, monitoring, and evaluation of various programs is a major problem, and which is required to be looked at more seriously, because we cannot continue with same program for more than 7 decades now, and time is ripe that we need to bring in a reformational change in this respect. So why policy reforms? Government of India had been thinking about it. The global concerns I have talked, the national concerns I have talked, and therefore a committee was constituted, which I happen to be associated with, to review agricultural policies and suggest strategies and action plan for a secure and sustainable agriculture. And this committee has given its report in August 2019. These reports are available on the website of Principal Scientific Advisor of Government of India. And some of the recommendations I would be bringing before you in the context of the secure and sustainable agriculture, which is also the topic of today's discussion. We have a national agriculture policy. We didn't have before, but we started it. I was that time associated with the council, and we drafted it in 1995, and it was debated for more than 5 years, but finally approved in the parliament in 2000. Later, the National Commission on Farmers, chaired by Dr. Swaminathan, of which Dr. R.B. Singh was also a member, they came out with a recommendation that there should be a national policy for farmers. So the attention towards farmer was drawn because you had a national commission on farmers. And now when we look at more than decade or 2 decades have passed, and there is need to relook at these policies. And also there is an issue, why 2 policies? When ministry is one, why not policy also on agriculture and farmers welfare as one policy at the national level? And how to address the agriculture, which otherwise is a state subject. In this context, issues for urgent action are, we need scaling of innovations. We need incentives instead of subsidies. In future, we need motivation of youth to be retained in agriculture, and cross-cutting, as I mentioned, we need more coordination and convergence. There are many programs, many activities, but it seems that we are all behind our empire building process. if we can coordinate and converge and collaborate, much better output can be of initiative like we had for oilseed mission to begin with, and later with the horticulture mission. I will mention about it shortly. And monitoring evaluation has to be not internalized, but has to be an external evaluation, so that we know where there is a gap and what more reforms are needed. Looking at the Indian NARS, perhaps the ICR and university system is one of the strongest in, I would say, Asia Pacific region, because I had been working with Asia Pacific while working with Asia Pacific Association of Agriculture Research Institutions. ICR and DARE was reorganized in 1972. All agriculture related institutions were brought under it. Also the responsibility for research, education and extension under same umbrella were given, which is a unique thing. Many other councils which have been established, whether Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, or even Philippines, have not been able to attain. And the status of the Director General of ICR to that of the Secretary to the Government of India really has given that needed impetus for reforms in agriculture. And we have a great strength of more than 35,000 scientists, which is one of the second largest scientific strength in the world. But when we look at the expenditure on ARD, we find that our expenditure has been consistent between 0.3 to 0.4%, which is around 2 billion today, compared to 1% in case of China, which is double than us. The problem of India is not less than that of China. Brazil 1.5%, that's why they are global exporters in horticulture today. South Africa 2%, Australia 3%, and USA 3%. And we have seen that returns from AR4D is much higher than other investments, whether on roads, education, whether on energy and other services. Almost more than 10 times, both in India as well as in many other developing countries, as worked out by the World Bank. But when you look at the allocations, we recently also published an article to highlight this, that look at 2010, 5,000 actual expenditure I'm talking about. Allocations are different issue. Allocations on the paper are there for 2019-20 also 8,000, but actual expenditure is again 5,000 or 5,675. So when you look at almost last one decade, practically there is not much, and 85% of our investment is going on the what you call as establishment. For research, very little available. And how can we really have this kind of situation and not provide much support for research to our scientists who can do wonders as they had been doing in the past? There is need for institutional reallocate adjustments and maybe new institutions, like when it is the state subject, then issue is of interstate, central state and interministerial coordination. And why not a council we have for national agriculture development and farmers welfare, like that of GST council, where you also have the same problem of taxation, state tax and this federal tax, and try to resolve on a common platform issues of water, issues of fertilizer, issues of energy and what. And why not we have at central level a permanent commission for farmers? Why farmers should sit on the road and call for their demands? Why not there is a mechanism which can have interface between the government and the farmers? We have commissions on women, commission on, say, backward classes, scheduled castes, and all other kinds of activities. Why not there is a commission for farmers? I have already talked to review all missions, programs, and the schemes. There must be an external review mechanism. And why can't it be with Niti Aayog for project monitoring and implementation? And above all, we see that there is proliferation of agricultural education institutions, and without managing and maintaining the required educational standards. National agriculture policy is now there. We have to see how we adjust with it and how the responsibility for agricultural education would continue through ICR and DARE. And I do see that there is a need for a regulatory authority to maintain quality of agricultural education through Agricultural Education Council of India. But whether under the education councils which are now being formed under National Education Policy, would there be a scope for it? And whether the responsibility of education will continue or it will be bifurcated as had been done in many other countries like Bangladesh. Education is with universities are with Ministry of Education, not with agriculture, not with the BARC. And same in Pakistan and same in Nepal. Nepal don't even have universities. So there are issues, and we have to guard against it, and we have to see how this coherence that we have been having, and there are dangers against the national agriculture research system. People always are talking, even those who are serving within the system are talking that this is a big organization, unmanageable organization, and maybe require reforms and restructuring. What is that restructuring? Obviously, to reduce its level of strength that we currently have. So you in the academy and all others present in the Science Congress have to think about this issue. Coming to the subsidy issue, it's government, both central and state are now spending about 4 lakh crores annually on subsidies. We are saying that why these subsidies cannot be converted into incentives, and through good agronomic practices and through resilience in agriculture, through use of effective and efficient fertilizer use on soil test basis, leveling of land to ensure that water requirement is reduced, verticum seed drill rather than broadcasting, micro irrigation rather than flood irrigation, use of solar energy rather than dependence on non-renewable energy, and why not support can be provided for environmental services like crop diversification. If rice wheat has to be diverted, then farmers need to be given incentives, as now some governments have started, both in case of Chhattisgarh and also in case of Haryana. Use of legumes in the cropping system is required, as is the case in US, where you have soybean and maize as a permanent crop rotation. Conservation agriculture has to be scaled. I will be mentioning about it. Agri-horticulture. Agroforestry has all the potential for major carbon sequestration, and we have useful diversity available, and much research is available which can be now scaled. And climate smart agriculture. And it is also worked out by our committee that instead of these subsidies, if 10,000 rupees per acre per family is provided up to a maximum of 10 acres to the needy farmers, possibly we will be moving towards more resilience and efficiency in our agricultural practices than providing just subsidies like 75,000 crores on fertilizers, particularly urea and DAP. If I need in my soil use of gypsum, what is the point I look for subsidy for nitrogen? And if there is need for lime in the acidic soils in the east, what is the point of talking about subsidy on nitrogenous fertilizers? I think these are the issues which require our attention. We need to look at revision of our acts. Thanks that government has already taken note of these recommendations, like Essential Commodity Act of 1955. It was needed at that time when there was scarcity of food. Model APMC Act, but no doubt the concerns that there can be hoarding or certain corporate sectors may get more benefited. I think those can be addressed and looked at more rationally. Approval of pending bills, seed bill of mid-60s is still not cleared for last 25 years. When I was in the council, we had put this revised seed bill, but not yet approved. Pesticide management bill is with the Parliament Agriculture Committee. I hope it gets cleared soon. Bri bill, Dr. Swaminathan mentioned about it. From TAS, we had recommended as long as back in 2007, it is still not approved. Need for policies, policy for MSP, I'll mention. Long-term policy for import and export. You just can't shut and switch on and switch off your strategy for export, that today you are exporting onion and tomorrow you are not. A policy on biotechnology, GM approach, genome editing approach, land utilization to take care of interest of both owner and the tenant. Why tenant will spend on land improvement if his tenancy is only for 1 or 2 years? And why landlord will give land if he is not sure that the land will not be his after tenancy for more longer period? Why can't we have proper laws for it? And of course, livestock breeding policy, I'll mention about it as well. MSP at 1.5 times, we have been told, and we are talking that it is being provided at 1.5 times, but not at the cost C2. And I am now a farmer in Rajasthan. I have been forced to sell our bajra harvest at, as against the 2,150 rupees last year minimum support price. I could not get more than 1,800. And in many cases, it is even half in many states as well. So there is a definite concern. And unfortunately, agriculture is one profession in which price is determined by others, whereas it is also equivalent to an industry. But in other industrial sector, price is determined by those who manufacture. We need to look at missions. Missionary approach seems to have been lost. Existing missions need to be revamped, reorganized, and made more focused, implemented and monitored, as was there when oilseed mission was started. And in 5 years' time, we could reduce import of oil to 0. New missions are needed: fishery, conservation agriculture, protected cultivation, quality seed and planting material, for even youth in agriculture. Impact of horticulture mission is known. Today, the production of horticulture is higher than that of even food crops. And this had been a successful model. We need to also think of livestock mission. Livestock mission is there, but it requires definitely the programs which can make a difference of improving productivity, exporting our beef. We are stuck up at 3.1 billion since 2012. We have the largest population of cattle and buffalo in the world. We have all the future scope. We need to ensure the animals. Insurance of animal is more important even than crop. Vaccination, sex semen we need, and value addition and management. And we know that we have been the largest producer of milk today, but our milk productivity is very low. So even policy on our local breeds and their improvement, and also on crossbred, 7.5 liter as against 40 liters of crossbreds elsewhere. So we need to really think as to how to improve efficiency there. And in case of fish production, marine production used to be higher before, almost 5 million tons. Now it is 1.3 million tons. It has come down to, whereas our coastal area is 7,500 kilometers. And we are exporting from our, thanks to inland aquaculture, that progress has been made. And today we have almost 12 to 14 million tons production. And the final part is that all what we have now to do is to harness science for new games. There are opportunities, GM crops, ICT, big data, CRISPR, Cas, bioinformatics, use of drones, robotics, artificial intelligence, farm mechanization, improved soil health, eco-regional planning. We need now more scientific land use planning rather than only soil testing. And we need public-private partnership and protection of IP to scale these innovations. There is tremendous scope for various areas, hybrid technology, coverage of maize can be increased to 90 to 95% as against 60% today. And we can double the maize yield in next, say, 5 to 7 years. Biotechnology, why only we are stuck up at cotton? Why not soybean, mustard, maize, brinjal? Conservation agriculture, we are only 5 million hectares, despite work for more than 25 years. And 20 million hectares could be easily achievable, and we have not done it in rain-fed area. Protected cultivation, after 25 years, still we are at 50,000 hectares. China has 2 million hectare area. Micro irrigation from 6 to 10 million hectare, when we will achieve, is also to be thought of, though we seem to have done well and covered by now 6 million hectare. Bioenergy, biofuel was talked initially. Can we meet this target of 20% by converting sugarcane, where now sugar is in our buffer stock of 4 million ton, which we cannot export because of the competition of price. And maize has all the scope for diversification, and US is benefiting from it. Brazil is benefiting from sugarcane through biofuel approach, and we need to move in terms of green energy. So there is a potential. Biofortified crop already, I think, has been discussed, and we need ICT for knowledge. So quickly, conservation agriculture, why should we burn? Why can't we use straw for recycling, either in situ or ex situ for manure production or for biofuel? Why can't we have technologies of the kind which at IRI, Dr. A.K. Singh and his group has come forward with, like direct seeding of Pusa Basmati, but would require better weed management? And why not herbicide tolerant varieties to be promoted so that we save water and we also increase production? There is tremendous scope. There are a lot of publications and evidence for scaling conservation agriculture, but there is definite need for policy support for scaling it. The nutrient use efficiency, India seemed to have done well, and now it is around 136 kg per hectare use compared to around 200 in case of US and 300 kg in China. But our efficiency is hardly 30%. We are, though China is also using 300, but their efficiency is also with us. When you look at these two graphs, and we are at the lower end. Why can't we increase like other countries, USA, Europe, Brazil, and France, etc.? Maybe we have to think in terms of scaling innovations there, using decision support systems, going in for the, leaf color charts or green seekers, ban this broadcasting, go in for verticum seed drills, or go in for liquid nitrogen, as is being done in countries like US and others. We need fertilizer innovation and policy reform. It seems our research effort on innovations in fertilizer in the context of customized fertilizer, in the context of biofertilizers, in the context of new innovations through nanotechnology are not to the level which is needed. And we need policy reform. Why support only for one specific macronutrient? Why not for micronutrient or other macronutrients? Coming to recent UN Food System Summit, decade of action is now before us. There are 15 action areas, and the key messages are that we have to think of regenerative agriculture around conservation agriculture for sustainable intensification, eco-regional planning, with more dependence on local food systems and higher investment on agriculture for R&D. In the past, ecosystem approach has helped us a great deal. Rice and sugarcane were never grown in the north, groundnut never in Gujarat, potato never in Indo-Gangetic plains, maize never in eastern India, but you see, and soybean in central India, but they have made all the impact. But we now see that maybe some of those were not favoring the natural resource conservation practices. So we need to again have a relook at some of these and diversify them and think in the context of eco-regional planning for rest of our country. We need to motivate youth, 200 million youth in rural India. I think the great strength compared to any other country in the whole world. And but have to make sure that our education system is not only creating the trained human resource which is seeking job, but they become job creators rather than job seekers. Youth to become extension agent. The privatization in extension is a must to take the new technologies to the farmers without any dilution effort, and youth as input and service providers, and youth as entrepreneurs. And I think we have to also relook at our KVKs. We are having really great strength, perhaps the best system that we have in each district of an institutional mechanism. 725 districts having these, or rather 725 KVKs in more than 650 districts is a great strength. But we cannot just say that they will be only frontline demonstration centers. We have to make them knowledge, skill, innovation centers. There are possible entrepreneurship options. So we need to think in the context of vocational training in the universities rather than formal education, also informal education, short programs or courses, diploma courses for some of these technologies would go a long way, whether it is seed production, nursery for quality plants, ICT, quality input supply, farm mechanization, custom hire center, post-harvest processing, agri-clinic, micro-irrigation, contract farming, protected cultivation, conservation agriculture, accredited laboratories even for soil and water analysis, or even for organic produce and for seed quality, biofertilizer, biopesticides. We are not even able to produce more than our requirement, even to the level of 5% of biofertilizer and biopesticide. Inland fishery, including prawn production, flower production, and whatnot. Finally, I come to the main theme of this Congress, energy in agriculture. Much has been already mentioned, more will be talked about, but modern agriculture requires energy for farm machinery, irrigation, cultivation, harvesting, processing, and cool chain. And our emphasis on solar energy, wind energy, non-exhaustible resources, hydropower, tidal, geothermal energy, and biofuel are the opportunities. India stands fourth in renewable energy, I talked earlier. After China, US, and Japan, we need to really compete with at least Japan and US, and great potential is there. Even China, and increased energy use efficiency is critical for production, storage, processing, value chain, and transportation. Innovations in renewable energy technology means clean energy solutions, which are better and more affordable. Energy use by having those cropping systems where there is less requirement than those which are needing more, like rice, wheat, and so on, and incorporating legumes in our cropping systems, or going in for those innovations like conservation agriculture, instead of rice wheat, maize wheat with drip system and with solar power. You have all win-win situation for all the economic development. Finally, carbon credit. Why not incentives to farmers for their environmental services, for which you need models like what is now being developed in case of Punjab, where if the in situ conservation or ex situ use of organic matter is there, or rice straw is there, then one can think of carbon trading. And corporate sector will be very happy to provide this kind of support, as carbon trading is taking place in most of the advanced countries. But in India, the challenge is how small scale farmers can be benefited. And for that, you require an innovative system to be put in place. And there is an initiative through Agro Indigo and Punjab government, and work with the CIMIT in that regard. We are talking of 5 trillion economy. Agriculture is contributing about 20%. So what I'm going to end with, that if we make our agriculture secure and sustainable, and keep this momentum of 20% contribution to agricultural GVA, then I think we will be contributing at least 1 trillion to this 5 trillion economy, about which call has been given by our Prime Minister. Presently, we are having about 2.6 trillion. We have to double it. We are much behind. Even countries like Germany, countries like France, United Kingdom, of course, United States much ahead. China is also much ahead, and even Japan is much ahead. But we have all the potential, and I have no doubt if there is policy to scale innovations and support to science and technology, we will make again a big headway in this regard. And finally, what we are needing is reforms towards secure and sustainable agriculture through good policies and governance, enhancing capital investment, incentives linked to good agronomic practices, priority for scaling innovations. Time is ripe and innovations are waiting to be scaled. Market reforms, definite need for it. But we need to make sure that these reforms are not putting more impediments and facilitating the process further for the farmers to link themselves directly with the market. Embracing private sector. We have not done it in the past. I think time has come that we need to embrace private sector more aggressively and effectively. And if we do that, I'm sure we will be addressing the concern of making farmer first. With this, I would like to conclude and say thank you very much for having given me this opportunity to present this Dr. A.B. Joshi Memorial Award.
Okay. Am I audible to you, sir? Am I audible to the colleagues?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
yeah.
Okay, great. Let me say, friends, this is a wonderful treat in the evening. We could have never anticipated anyone to have such a comprehensive view of the entire Indian agriculture of today and tomorrow. Professor Paroda, I wish we can give you a standing ovation. Please accept our greatest regard for the wonderful work, and on behalf of the entire participation, I give you a standing ovation for the kind of performance, the kind of lecture you have delivered. It is amazing. Friends, to summarize such a lecture, it's a very difficult task. It is offering a defeat for myself. However, I will try to put a few points out of the entire thing, which probably you may take it as a take-home message. The very outlook that he presented is so positive that India can do and must do it. And do it today, tomorrow is late. So this is one message, very positive message, can be done, must be done. He also talked about the 3 Ps to begin with, that is the production, productivity, and profitability. The congruence of these 3 will be essential through adopting pro-nature resilient agriculture, which will be again backed up with the socio-economic consideration of appropriate pricing and export. The next thing that I find that he had several I's which he mentioned, and those I's I want to mention to you. What are those? Those I's are innovate. So many times he talked about innovation. 2, invest. We are investing not enough. If you are investing at the right place in the right way, America and Australia can do 3% of the total agricultural GDP to invest in agriculture research and extension. The expenditure in extension intensity is hardly 0.18%. Here it is 3% as a whole, as you can see. In India, for agriculture research, it is 0.4%, while for extension, it is 1.8%. So he emphasized that invest properly, appropriately. The next I that he emphasized is institution. Institution, federal and government, state governments, and we have Niti Aayog, which is based on federal cooperativism. And then obviously this institution that he mentioned is important. He said incentivize. The next I is, so he talked about 8 or 9 I's, and I'm telling you what is the 4th I. The 4th I is the institutionalization of the system. Institutionalize it and institutionalize it appropriately. Then he talked about incentivize. If the youth has to be brought to agriculture, incentivize the system to attract those who are not attracted towards it, and incentivize it adequately, appropriately, and inclusively. So the next thing was inclusiveness. You must be able to reach the unreached, include the excluded. And that he talked about the smallholder, poor, and the paradox which exists in India. Then he talked about the infrastructure. He talked about the knowledge system along with information. So the next I was information and knowledge system. And then finally, which he talked about, the final I, which I think is so important, so many times emphasized, is implementation. Implementation, monitoring, and accountability, which is very poor, as a matter of fact, at the moment. And we should be able to bring these 4, 5, 10 I's, which I mentioned to you, together. I can also see he gave a kind of warning to agriculture education. We must be able to, the ICR must be able to see that agriculture education, the way the policy has to change in line with the new education policy. We keep a hold on this. Nobody should be able to take anything away from ICR in terms of agricultural education, because agricultural education is the basic and the foremost fundamental requirement for all the things which Professor Paroda you mentioned. So therefore, this is absolutely essential that we must care for our education, hold it with ICR, with the system, with further strengthening, more investment, appropriate way of taking agriculture education forward. We must be also able to conservation agriculture. So many times he talked and he said, scale it up. And for that, I give you the mantra of FAO. FAO says, save and grow. That is conserve and grow. And that is the message which he talked about. And ultimately, he also said, we must be able to reach the unreached, a smallholder farmer at the center of the stage, undernourished at the center of the stage, the wasted children, those who are suffering, not able to unfold their potential, must be put at the center of the stage. Mission approach for nutrition, absolutely. And he also talked about breaking the antagonistic connections among the various factors which are causing inefficiency today. So if we have to have a climate smart agriculture, so mitigation, productivity, resilience, all have to be congruent together. There cannot be a slippage between each other, and the conflict should be immediately removed. And if we have to build back better, whether it is climate change or corona or the pandemics, the kind of we are suffering, if we have to build back better, then the point which was made by Dr. Mohapatra and also by Dr. Paroda is that we should be able to have policy, along with the policy, we should be able to have the soil, water, energy integration without the antagonism being brought into the system. So to build back better, all these three major natural elements of soil, water, and energy have to be congruent and bring into the accountability through proper socio-economic studies, which we are not taking care of so much. So economic access to food, challenges, all those should be covered by the socio-economists in a big way, and should be able to do what the world is wanting us to do today, congrue the various action points of sustainable development goals. Also the UN food system, which was discussed a few weeks ago, the 5 and 15 points of that summit of the United Nations should be all congruent in our policy of agriculture. We should be able to, again, I admire, again repeated by the Prime Minister, the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, the climate change management, the one sun, one world, one grid, one Modi Sahab, and then if it has to be one, we must be able to take a differentiated and disaggregated approach where suits the best, we apply that particular thing. And therefore, if we commit ourselves to this, then zero carbon emission or the greenhouse gas emission by 2070 is achievable. And for that purpose, new schemes and technologies have to be innovated and brought to bear upon. And social science responsibility, with the corporate social responsibility to marry the public and the private sector in a very happy mode is very essential. So therefore, my dear friends, these words are the one which I borrowed and just try to modify and try to see that it is able to convey the entire message which Dr. Paroda in his very wonderful speech has conveyed. So these, I stop here. Thank you very much for taking longer time and so on and so forth. But I think this is a very strong message that we are able to send across. I hope everyone is taking note of it. All concerned individuals will be responsible right from the government to the individual small farmer household. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to me.